Can you confirm that the FBI had that sort of engagement with your own agents embedded into the crowd on January 6th?
If you are asking whether the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and/or agents, the answer is emphatically
You're saying
not.
no?
No.
You're saying no?
Not
Okay.
violence orchestrated by FBI sources or agents.
Hi again, everyone. It is 5 o'clock in New York. I'm Alicia Menendez in for Nicole Wallace. The answer is emphatically no. Just last week, that is how FBI Director Christopher Wray had to respond to a Republican congressman pushing the widely debunked conspiracy that FBI agents were among the January 6th rioters. That conspiracy has circulated for years on the far right, but has never been met with any evidence to prove it. And yet, as we heard from Congressman Clay Higgins at a worldwide threats hearing, no less, that's what some Republican lawmakers want to spend their time asking about. It does not stop there. This weekend, Senator Mike Lee of Utah spread more misinformation about this same unfounded theory. On the platform formerly known as Twitter, Lee, on his personal account, went after former January 6th Select Committee member Liz Cheney, responding to a video of the riot she posted saying, P.S., how many of these guys are feds? As if you'd ever tell us. He then reposted a former West Virginia legislator and January 6th rioter who questioned if a different rioter in a video was, quote, flashing a badge. About that suggestion, Lee wrote, I can't wait to ask FBI Director Christopher Wray about this at our next oversight hearing. I predict that, as always, his answers will be 97% information free. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene pounced on that badge conspiracy as well, although she ended up deleting the part of her post that mentioned it. She did, however, keep up the parts of the message calling for another January 6th Select Committee, saying prosecutions must happen under a Trump DOJ and that MAGA is not responsible for 1-6. Now, we don't like to amplify lies on this program, but we need to call them out when those spouting them are so clearly, as Nicole likes to put it, on Earth 2. The man Lee and Greene thought was carrying a badge, he was actually carrying an e-cigarette. He's currently serving a 4-year prison sentence for his role on the 6th. And regarding Greene's claim that MAGA did not do this, just listen to the rioters in their own words on that day.
We were invited here! We were invited by the President of the United States!
There's a million of us out there, and we are listening to Trump. You're the boss.
Call Trump, yes! Dude, let's tell Trump what's up.
Trump would be very upset.
And he'd be like, no, just say we love him. We love you, bro. No, he'll be happy. What do you mean? We're fighting for Trump.
In response to Senator Lee, Cheney called out his hypocrisy, writing, you're a lawyer, Mike. You're capable of understanding the scores of January 6 verdicts and rulings in our federal courts. You didn't object to electors on January 6 because you knew what Trump was doing was unconstitutional, and you know what you're doing now is wrong. These posts by Republicans come after new Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said on Friday he will release all 44,000 hours of January 6 security footage to the public. Joining our conversation, Democratic Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of California. She served on the January 6th Select Committee. Congresswoman, thank you for being with us. When asked for comment from NBC, a spokesman for Senator Lee dodged the question about the man with the vape or the e-cigarette and then listed questions about other rioters. You were part of the bipartisan congressional panel that investigated the insurrection. You studied this day thoroughly. What do you say back to your Republican colleagues?
Well, I'm really embarrassed for them. Many of them, they were evacuated along with me. They know that this was not a normal day of tourists visiting. They know that more than 160 police officers were injured, some so seriously that they had to leave the force. They know that hundreds of these rioters have been convicted by a jury of their peers because of the overwhelming evidence. I guess they must think their supporters are dumb, that they will somehow convince them that what happened didn't happen. You know, don't believe your lying eyes. It's really pathetic.
Let's talk about one of the supporters that was convicted. A closer look at the man Lee and Greene falsely said was holding a badge. His name is Kevin Lyons. On the 6th, he stole a framed photo of Congressman John Lewis. He stole a staffer's wallet from then Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. At his sentencing hearing, he acknowledged his wrongdoing, calling himself an idiot and stupid. He's now serving 4 years in federal prison. So if he was an undercover FBI agent, as Mike Lee would like to have you believe, it would seem he did a pretty bad job. Right? The information is all out there, as Liz Cheney says, and Mike Lee is an attorney, so he, if anyone, he knows better.
He should know better. And, you know, recently, the former president was trying to put a spin on his interest on that day of going to the Capitol by saying that had he gone, you know, his supporters that were the rioters would have stopped. So even the former president realized that these were his people. When he called in to Kevin McCarthy during the riot, trying to say something else, Kevin said, no, these are your people. It's obvious, it's true. And, you know, for the life of me, I can't understand how people who were evacuated along with me, who saw what was happening, can try and spin this at this late date in some other way. It's bizarre.
Well, to your point about things being bizarre, the current speaker, Mike Johnson, said he's going to post all 44,000 hours of security footage from 1/6 so the public can see it. I one, want to know what you think is motivating the speaker, and two, having pored over these videos, talk to us about the decision making that went into what you showed and what you didn't.
Well, you'd have to ask Mike what his motivation is, but it looks like he's trying to cozy up to the right-wing nutcase caucus in the Republican House members. We published what was cleared by the Capitol Police. They had a very high level of anxiety about the security, obviously, of the facility and the people in it, and they wanted to make sure that by showing certain clips that we weren't giving bad guys information. And so we were, very cautious, and we did defer to law enforcement on what would be hazardous to our security in terms of releasing information. I think what the speaker is doing is unwise. I think it will likely jeopardize the security of the facility and all of the members of the House and Senate within it, along with tourists who come visit us, real tourists. I don't think it's responsible, and I really can't understand how someone who's supposed to be a steward of the House would do something so reckless.
Well, there's the question of releasing the footage. There's also this question of substantiating a core set of facts that we can all agree on. And we are now, better than most, almost 3 years out from the Capitol insurrection. And still, 3 years out, these debunked conspiracies, they are being spread not just by the far reaches of the internet, but by Republicans in Congress, by people who collect a paycheck from U.S. citizens. How can we move forward, right? How can we, as a country, evolve if people don't listen to the basic facts?
Well, regrettably, there are some Republicans, certainly not all, who are down a conspiracy rat hole. I mean, they're as crazy as other people, believing in QAnon and a lot of other nonsense. They got elected, so they are a member of Congress. I mean, you sort of wonder why voters would choose somebody to stand up for them who has such a small grip with reality. But there's our situation. We have some members who, to say it's fringe is to be kind. They really don't have a grip on reality.